Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Boone Matthews wiped his hands on a kitchen towel and tossed it over his shoulder. The sizzle of ground beef in the cast iron skillet filled the modest kitchen with a savory aroma. He'd never been much of a cook before Laurel left, but these past 2 weeks had been a crash course in domesticity. His large, calloused hands, more accustomed to motorcycle engines than measuring cups, handled the spatula with surprising deftness. "Willow, dinner in 10, he called out, his deep voice carrying through their single-story ranch house. The patter of small feet answered him, and his 8-year-old daughter appeared in the doorway. Her dark hair was tied in uneven pigtails, her own handiwork, and she clutched a well-worn stuffed rabbit against her chest. "Is it tacos?" Willow asked, climbing onto one of the bar stools at the kitchen counter. Her legs swung back and forth, too short to reach the floor. "Sure is." Boone smiled, the expression softening his weathered face. The remnants of his military crew cut had grown out just enough to show the first flecks of gray at his temples. "Someone's got to keep the taco tradition alive while Mom's away." Willow nodded solemnly. "Tuesday is taco day. Mom never forgets." But she doesn't. Boone turned back to the stove, his smile fading slightly. He sprinkled taco seasoning into the meat and stirred. "How about you set the table, kiddo?" As Willow arranged plates and napkins, Boone checked his phone. No missed calls from Laurel. She'd texted earlier a brief message saying her mother was doing better, but still needed her. 2 weeks had stretched into 15 days with no clear return date. Nothing unusual about a daughter taking care of her sick mother. But something in Laurel's tone during their last call had left Boone uneasy. "When's Mom coming home?" Willow asked, laying out forks they wouldn't need for tacos. Boone leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Not sure yet. Grandma Odessa's still under the weather. But she always gets sick," Willow said, her face scrunching up in thought. "Mom said this time was different." "Different how?" Boone asked, suddenly alert. Willow shrugged, attention already drifting. "I don't know. She just said she might be gone longer this time. Can we have extra cheese?" Boone nodded absently, mind turning over his daughter's words. Laurel had told him Odessa had the flu, nothing serious, just needed some help around the house. But if she'd told Willow something different, he shook off the thought. The Marines had trained him to be vigilant, to question inconsistencies, but this was his wife of 10 years. If something was wrong, she'd tell him. "Dad!" Willow tugged at his shirt. "The meat's burning." Boone cursed under his breath and turned down the heat. "Good catch, Will." They assembled their tacos side by side, Willow's neat and sparse, Boone's overflowing with meat, cheese, and salsa. The TV murmured in the background, some cartoon Willow liked with talking animals. Yes, they ate. Boone studied his daughter. She'd been quieter since Laurel left, more clingy when he dropped her off at school. 8 was a tough age to be without your mom, even temporarily. "Dad," Willow said between bites, "can we go see Mommy tomorrow?" Boone paused mid-chew. "Tomorrow? Yeah, it's Saturday. No school. What about your soccer game?" "It's just practice," Willow said, pushing her half-eaten taco away. "I miss Mommy." Boone's features softened. "I miss her too, Will." He considered for a moment. Odessa lived about 2 hours away in Henderson. They could make a day trip of it. "Tell you what, let's surprise her. We'll head out in the morning." Willow's face lit up. "Really? Can I bring my new drawing to show her?" "You bet," Boone said, smiling at his daughter's excitement. "And maybe we'll get ice cream on the way back." Later, after Willow was in bed, Boone sat on the porch with a beer. The Charlotte suburbs were quiet, just the occasional car passing and the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. His phone sat heavy in his pocket. He pulled it out and dialed Laurel's number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Hey, it's me," he said after the beep. "Just checking in. Willow's missing you something fierce. Call when you can." He paused. "Love you." Boone ended the call and stared at the screen. 3 days since they'd last spoken. Not unusual given the circumstances, but not like Laurel either. She normally called every night to talk to Willow before bed. The house felt emptier without her laughter, without her constant motion. Laurel had always been the energy in their relationship, the dreamer to his pragmatist, the talker to his listener. He finished his beer in silence, trying to ignore the knot forming in his gut. Scene 2. The peak inside Boone's truck rumbled down the tree-lined street, the GPS announcing they were 5 minutes from their destination. Beside him, Willow bounced in her booster seat, clutching a folder of drawings. "Did you text Mommy we're coming?" she asked, eyes wide with excitement. "Nope," Boone said, turning on a Maple Drive. "It's a surprise, remember? Let's see her face when she opens the door and sees us." They passed neat suburban homes with well-trimmed lawns. Odessa's neighborhood was nicer than theirs, more manicured, with newer cars in the driveways. His mother-in-law had never approved of his choice of profession. A garage owner wasn't what she'd envisioned for her college-educated daughter. "There it is." Willow pointed at a 2-story colonial with blue shutters. A silver Lexus sat in the driveway Odessa's car. No sign of Laurel's red Mazda. Boone pulled up the curb and cut the engine. "Ready for Operation Surprise?" Willow nodded eagerly, unbuckling her seatbelt. They walked up the curved path to the front door, Willow skipping ahead. Boone carried a small bouquet of flowers they'd picked up at a grocery store. Daisies for Odessa, lilies for Laurel. As they reached the porch, Willow moved to ring the doorbell, but stopped suddenly. "Dad," she whispered, "the door's open." Boone looked where she was pointing. The heavy oak door was indeed ajar, maybe an inch. From inside, he could hear voices, the low murmur of conversation, then a burst of laughter he recognized immediately. "Laurel." "Dad, look." Willow tugged his sleeve. "But do it quietly." Frowning, Boone stepped forward and gently nudged the door open a few more inches. Through the gap, hit a clear view of Odessa's living room. What he saw froze the blood in his veins. Laurel sat on the couch wearing nothing but a silk bathrobe, her hair wet from shower. Across from her, lounging comfortably in jeans and a button-down, was a man Boone didn't recognize. Tall, thin, with styled dark hair and a neatly trimmed beard. They were sharing a bottle of wine, glasses in hand, faces flushed with alcohol and intimacy. "I don't know why you worry so much," the man said, reaching over to brush a strand of hair from Laurel's face. "He doesn't suspect a thing." Laurel leaned into his touch. "I know, but Willow's been asking questions." "She's not stupid. Kids are resilient," the man said. "Once we're settled, she'll adjust. Besides, you said Boone's more married to that garage of his than to you." Laurel laughed, a sound Boone hadn't heard in months. "Grady, that's terrible." "But true," the man Grady replied. He leaned in and kissed her, his hand sliding inside her robe. Boone felt a tug on his hand. Willow. He'd forgotten she was there, watching this unfold beside him. Her small face was confused, eyes darting between her mother and the stranger. Without a word, Boone backed away, pulling Willow with him. The flowers fell from his hand onto the porch. Moving silently, he led his daughter back to the truck, his mind blank except for one thought: get Willow away from here. Once they were inside the truck, doors closed, Boone gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. "Dad!" Willow's voice was small. "Why was Mommy with that man? And why didn't we say hello?" Boone struggled to find words. "How do you explain betrayal to an 8-year-old? That's..." He started, his voice rough. "That was Mommy's friend, and we're going to give them some time to talk. But let's get ice cream," he interrupted, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Like I promised." As they drove away, Boone's mind replayed what he'd seen his wife, laughing with another man, planning something that clearly involved taking his daughter away. Every word, every gesture burned into his memory. They stopped at an ice cream parlor 20 minutes away. Boone watched Willow eat her chocolate cone, her face still troubled but distracted by the treat. His own ice cream melted untouched in its cup. "Are we going back to see Mommy later?" Willow asked, wiping chocolate from her chin. Boone shook his head slowly. "Not today, Will. I think Grandma Odessa needs more rest than we thought." His phone buzzed with a text. "Laurel, hope you and Willow are having a good day. Miss you both. Mom's feeling better. Might be home next weekend." The casual lie turned his stomach. He didn't reply. Janice opened her door to find Boone standing on her porch, Willow half asleep against his shoulder. The evening sky had darkened to deep blue behind them. "This is unexpected," Jenny said, her eyebrows rising. As Laurel's best friend since college, she'd been a fixture in their lives, becoming Willow's godmother and a reliable babysitter. Need a favor, Boone said, his voice tight. Can Willow stay here tonight? Janice's expression shifted to concern. Of course, but is everything okay? You look like hell. I'll explain later. He set Willow down gently. Hey kiddo, you're having a sleepover with Aunt Jenny's tonight. Willow rubbed her eyes. But I didn't bring my pajamas. I've got extras here, sweetie, Janice assured her. And hot chocolate with those mini marshmallows you like. That perked Willow up. She hugged Boone's legs. Will you come back for me tomorrow? First thing, he promised, crouching to her level. Be good for Aunt Jenny's. After Willow disappeared inside, Janice blocked the doorway. What's going on, Boone? You're scaring me. Boone's jaw tightened. Ask Laurel. Is she okay? Did something happen to Odessa? Odessa's fine. His laugh was bitter. Laurel's fine too. Having a great time, actually. Understanding dawned in Janice's eyes. Oh, Boone. What did you find out? Enough. He turned to leave. Call if Willow needs anything. I've got work to do. Janice caught his arm. Don't do anything stupid. He gently removed her hand. Not planning to. Just need to think. An hour later, Boone unlocked the side door to his garage. Matthew's custom motorcycles had been his dream for years, a place where he built and restored bikes, turning rusted metal into roaring machines. The shop smelled of oil, metal, and leather, familiar smells that usually brought him comfort. Tonight, they did nothing to ease the storm in his chest. He flipped on a single work light and sat heavily on a stool at his workbench. The truth of what he'd seen kept hitting him in waves. Laurel and a stranger. The casual way they'd talked about him, about taking Willow away. The easy intimacy that spoke of a relationship beyond a casual fling. How long had it been going on? Weeks? Months? Had every trip to help Odessa been a cover? Boone pulled out his phone and opened his photos. Laurel smiled back at him from countless images at Willow's birthday, at their anniversary dinner 3 months ago, at the beach last summer. He thought they'd been happy. Busy, sometimes distant with his work and her teaching job, but happy. What had the man Grady said? Once we're settled, they were planning a future together, planning to take his daughter to a cold clarity settled over Boone. This wasn't just about Laurel's betrayal. This was about Willow, about the family he'd built and protected, about the life he'd fought for. He opened his contacts and scrolled to a number he hadn't called in years. Tay, his brother. They'd fallen out after their father's death, disagreements over the will, over the family home, over old resentments that never healed. But if there was ever a time he needed family, it was now. The phone rang for so long Boone almost hung up. Then a gruff voice answered. Who's calling this late? It's Boone. Silence stretched between them. Well, damn, Tay finally said. Must be the end of the world. Need you down here, Boone said simply. Another pause. That bad. Worse. Tay sighed heavily. Give me 6 hours. Boone ended the call and turned to his workbench. He pulled out tools methodically, wrenches, screwdrivers, a blowtorch. There was a 1978 Harley he'd been restoring for a client. Work would keep his hands busy while his mind processed. Hour after hour, he stripped metal, replaced parts, filed edges smooth. The physical labor couldn't drown out his thoughts, but it channeled the rage into something productive. By dawn, the bike was half dismantled, pieces laid out in precise rows. His hands were grimy, his eyes bloodshot, but his mind was clear. Laurel had made her choice. Now he would make his daughter knock at the shop door, pulled him from his thoughts. Tay stood outside, looking older than Boone remembered. 5 years had added silver to his brother's beard and lines around his eyes, but the family resemblance was unmistakable. Doors open, Boone called. Tay stepped inside, taking in the dismantled motorcycle and his brother's haggard appearance. You look like shit. Feel worse. What happened? Boone set down his wrench. Laurel's cheating. Planning to leave. Take Willow. Tay let out a long whistle. You catch them? With Willow right beside me. Boone's voice roughened. They didn't see us. Christ. Tay pulled up a stool. What's the plan? That's what I'm figuring out. Boone met his brother's eyes. But I'm not losing my daughter. Tay nodded slowly. Then we'd better get started. 1 week. 7 days of absolute silence between Boone and Laurel, with only text messages about her delayed return. 7 days of meticulous planning. Boone sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by documents. Credit card statements, phone records, bank accounts. The digital trail of Laurel's deception laid bare before him. With Tay's help, his brother had always been better with computers. They had uncovered months of suspicious transactions. Hotel charges, dinner receipts for two, cash withdrawals that couldn't be accounted for, and a new bank account opened 6 months ago. An account that received regular deposits, money Laurel had been skimming from their joint savings. "Look at this," Tay said, pointing at his laptop screen. "Your wife's friend has been busy." Boone leaned in. A social media profile for Grady Corman filled the screen. Director of Administration at Charlotte West High School, where Laurel taught English. Late 30s. Divorced. Picture showed a man who smiled too much, who dressed too carefully. The kind of man who'd wear cologne to a baseball game. "He's her boss," Boone said flatly. "Technically, yeah. And look here." Tay clicked to another tab. A real estate listing for a house in Henderson 3 blocks from Odessa's place. Sold 2 months ago to one Grady Corman. The pieces clicked into place. The extended visits to Odessa. The weekend work conferences. The late nights grading papers. "Dad," Willow's voice came from the doorway. "I made something for you." Boone quickly closed the laptop as his daughter approached, a drawing clutched in her small hands. She'd been quiet since their aborted visit to Odessa's, asking fewer questions about when Laurel would return, as if she sensed the fragile equilibrium of their household. "Let's see it, kiddo." Boone pulled her onto his lap. Willow held up her artwork proudly. A crayon drawing of 3 figures standing in front of a blue house. A tall man with a beard. A woman with long dark hair. A small girl between them. "That's you. That's Mommy. And that's me," Willow explained, pointing to each figure. "And that's Grandma Odessa's backyard." Boone stiffened. "When did you draw this?" "Just now." Willow traced the outline of the house. "Mommy says this might be our new house." Tay shot Boone a warning glance as his brother's hands clenched into fists. "When did Mommy tell you that?" Boone asked, keeping his voice steady. Willow shrugged. "When we visited before. The man was there too. He has a funny beard." Ice spread through Boone's veins. "You've met him before?" "Uh-huh. He's Mommy's friend from school. He showed me the tree house." Boone exchanged a look with Tay. Laurel had been taking Willow to meet her lover, planning their new life together. His wife wasn't just betraying him, she was actively preparing their daughter for a future without him. "Willow," Tay interjected gently, "why don't you go pick a movie for us to watch? I think your dad needs a minute." After Willow left, Boone stared at the drawing. The happy family in front of the house. Except it wasn't him in the picture. The figure had Grady's pointed beard, not his short military cut. "She's planning to leave," Boone said, his voice hollow. "Take Willow and move in with him." "Not just planning," Tay corrected. "She's already started. Look at these." He slid several papers across the table. Bank statements from a secret account. Recent withdrawals. Large ones. Lawyer money, Tay explained. "She paid a retainer last week." Boone's blood ran cold. "She's filing for custody. Most likely. And if she establishes herself in Henderson, near her mother, with a new stable relationship. Courts favor mothers," Boone finished, the realization sinking in. "I get weekends at best. If she claims you're difficult or unstable, maybe less." Boone stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. The thought of Willow living with Grady, of his daughter calling another man dad, made him physically ill. Everything he'd built, his family, his home, his life, was being dismantled without his knowledge. "She's not taking my daughter," he said finally, his voice like steel. "Not a chance in hell." Tay watched him carefully. "What's the play?" Boone thought for a moment. "We keep digging. Find everything. And then we confront her on my terms. And until then, we act normal. I drop Willow at school. Go to work. Let Laurel think her secret's safe." His eyes hardened. "Then we tear it all down." 3 days later, Laurel texted that she was coming home. Odessa was better. She'd be back tomorrow evening. Missed them both terribly. Boone read the message twice, then set his phone down. With Tay's help, he'd compiled a damning collection of evidence. The affair had been going on for at least 8 months. Laurel and Grady had been careful, but not careful enough. Hotel receipts. Text messages recovered from the family iPad Laurel had forgotten was synced to her phone. Emails discussing their future together. Most damning was what they'd found about Grady himself. A history of workplace relationships. A suspension at his previous school for inappropriate conduct. Financial troubles that had mysteriously resolved around the time Laurel began transferring money to her secret account. "You ready for this?" Tay asked, organizing the files they'd printed. Boone nodded. "Been ready since I saw them together. Remember, cool and collected. The moment you lose your temper, you lose." "I know." Boone had spent 10 years in the Marines before opening his garage. He'd faced insurgents, IEDs, and desperation. He knew how to control himself under pressure, and he knew how to win a war. Laurel arrived home at 6:37 p.m., her red Mazda pulling into the driveway as Boone watched from the kitchen window. She emerged looking refreshed, not at all like someone who'd spent 2 weeks nursing a sick mother. Her hair was freshly cut, her clothes new. Willow was at Jenny's again, a precaution Boone had insisted on. This confrontation wasn't for a child's ears. The front door opened. "Hello, I'm home." Laurel's cheerful voice echoed through the house. The sound of her keys hitting the entry table. Her footsteps in the hallway. "Boone? Willow? Where is everyone?" "In here," Boone called, his voice even. Laurel appeared in the kitchen doorway, a smile on her face that faltered when she saw his expression. "What's wrong?" "Where's Willow?" "At Jenny's." Boone gestured to the chair across from him. "We need to talk." Wariness crept into Laurel's eyes, but she sat, setting her purse on the table. "Is everything okay? Did something happen with Willow?" "Willow's fine." Boone reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object. He placed it on the table between them. Laurel stared at it. A burner phone. Her burner phone, which she kept hidden in her classroom desk. "Where did you?" "You left the door open." Boone interrupted, his voice deadly calm. "At Odessa's. Last Saturday." The color drained from Laurel's face. "What are you talking about?" "Willow wanted to surprise you. So we drove up." Boone leaned forward. "Imagine my surprise when I saw you on the couch with Grady Corman. Hair wet, wearing a robe." Laurel's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. "Imagine Willow's confusion." Boone continued, seeing her mother with a strange man, talking about a new house. About taking her away. "Boone, I can explain." "Save it." He pushed a folder across the table. 8 months, Laurel. 8 months of hotels, of lies, of planning your exit, of stealing from our savings. Laurel's shock gave way to anger. "I wasn't stealing. That money was as much mine as yours. The money doesn't matter." Boone's voice remained steady. "You betrayed both of us. Me and Willow." "It wasn't like that." Laurel's defensiveness rose. "You weren't there, Boone. You were never there. Always at the garage. Always with your bikes. I needed more. So you found it with your boss." Boone nodded to the documents. A man with a history of workplace relationships. A man under investigation for misappropriating school funds. Laurel's eyes widened. "That's not true." "It is. Ask him about the audit the school board launched last month. Ask him where the money for his new house really came from." "You don't understand," Laurel insisted, her voice rising. "Grady loves me. He wants a future with me with us. You and I, we've been done for years. You're too cold, too distant. Willow needs someone who can show emotion, who can be there." Boone laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Willow needs her father. And unlike you, I've never lied to her." "What do you want, Boone?" Laurel demanded, tears welling in her eyes. "An apology? Fine, I'm sorry I hurt you. But this has been over for a long time. What I want," Boone said, his voice steel, "is for you to understand exactly what's going to happen now. You're getting nothing. No sympathy. No custody. You can't stop me from seeing my daughter. Watch me." Boone opened another folder, revealing printouts of text messages between Laurel and Grady, discussing how to manage Boone during the separation. Plans to claim emotional abuse. Strategies to limit his custody. Laurel's face crumpled. "Where did you get those?" "You left your iPad at home. Still linked to your messages." Boone's expression was impassive. "You were careless, Laurel. Every step of the way." "This isn't fair," she whispered. "I made a mistake, but Willow is still my daughter. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary." What you did was calculated betrayal. Boone stood, gathering the documents. I've already spoken to a lawyer. When you're served with divorce papers, don't act surprised. Laurel's tears flowed freely now. Please, Boone, we can work this out. For Willow's sake. You should have thought about Willow before you started planning your new family with Grady. Boone's voice didn't waver. Pack what you need for a few days. You can stay with your boyfriend or your mother, but you're not staying here. You can't kick me out of my own house. It's my house. Check the deed. Boone moved toward the door. I'll be back in an hour. Be gone. As he left, Laurel called after him, her voice breaking. You can't do this. You can't take her from me. Boone didn't turn around. In the driveway, Tay waited in his truck. How'd it go? His brother asked as Boone slid into the passenger seat. Exactly as expected. Boone stared straight ahead. She denied, then deflected, then begged. And you didn't flinch. Boone checked his watch. Let's pick up Willow. We'll get dinner. Give Laurel time to pack. Tay studied his brother's profile. You holding up okay? Boone thought about the question. The anger still burned inside him, but it was controlled now, channeled into purpose. I'm going to win this, Tay. Whatever it takes. I know you will. Tay started the engine. The question is what it'll cost you. Boone's jaw tightened. She made her choice. Now she lives with it. The courthouse loomed against the morning sky, its stone facade imposing and cold. Boone straightened his tie, a suffocating formality he endured for appearances. Beside him, his lawyer, Marcus Daniels, reviewed notes on his tablet. Remember, Marcus said without looking up, let me do the talking. Judge Harper can be unpredictable, especially in custody matters. I remember. Boone replied, tersely. 6 weeks had passed since he'd confronted Laurel. 6 weeks of legal maneuvering, of Willow's confusion and tears, of a house that felt both emptier and more peaceful without his wife's presence. Laurel had filed for legal separation and emergency custody of Willow 3 days after moving out, claiming Boone was emotionally unstable and potentially violent. A baseless accusation that nonetheless required his immediate response. Today was the preliminary hearing to establish temporary custody arrangements while the divorce proceeded. The first real battle in what promised to be a long war. There she is, Marcus murmured, nodding toward the courthouse steps. Laurel ascended the stairs, flanked by a sharp-looking woman in a navy suit, her attorney, and, incongruously, Odessa. No sign of Grady. Smart move on Laurel's part. Bringing her lover to a custody hearing would have been disastrous. Boone watched their approach, his face expressionless. Laurel had lost weight, her cheeks hollow beneath carefully applied makeup. Their eyes met briefly before she looked away. Mr. Matthews. Her lawyer extended a hand. Catherine Benson. We spoke on the phone. Boone ignored the outstretched hand. Marcus stepped in smoothly. Shall we head inside? I believe we're in courtroom 3. The courtroom was austere, all dark wood and muted colors. Boone and Marcus took their places at one table, Laurel and Catherine at the other. Odessa sat directly behind her daughter, her disapproving gaze fixed on Boone. A side door opened, and a small woman with short gray hair entered. All rise. The Honorable Judge Elaine Harper presiding. Judge Harper settled behind the bench, her sharp eyes scanning the courtroom. Be seated. Matthews versus Matthews, preliminary custody hearing. I've reviewed the filings from both parties. She peered over her glasses at the lawyers. Let's be clear from the outset. I don't appreciate having my court used as a battleground for vindictive spouses. My only concern is the welfare of the minor child. We understand, Your Honor, Catherine began. My client. Save it, counselor. I'll hear arguments in a moment. Judge Harper shuffled papers. First, I'd like to hear from the child's advocate. A woman Boone hadn't noticed rose from a bench at the side of the courtroom. Dr. Eleanor Reed, the court-appointed psychologist who had interviewed Willow twice in the past week. Dr. Reed, your assessment, please, the judge directed to Dr. Reed consulted her notes. Your Honor, I've met with Willow Matthews on 2 occasions, once in the presence of each parent separately. She's a bright, articulate 8-year-old who clearly loves both her parents. And your observations regarding her current living situation? Willow has remained in the family home with her father since the separation. Her routine has been maintained: same school, same activities, same bedroom. Mr. Matthews has adjusted his work schedule to be available for school drop-off and pickup. And Mrs. Matthews' involvement. Mrs. Matthews has had supervised visitation 3 times weekly, as per the temporary order. Willow reports enjoying these visits, but Dr. Reed hesitated. But what doctor? Judge Harper prompted. Willow expressed anxiety about her mother's plans to move her to a new house. She specifically stated, and I quote, "I don't want to live with Mr. Corman. He's not my dad." Dr. Reed looked up. When asked directly where she feels safest, Willow said, "With my father." Boone kept his expression neutral, but inside, a weight lifted. Willow had spoken her truth. Laurel made a small sound of distress. Her lawyer placed a restraining hand on her arm. Judge Harper nodded. "Thank you, Dr. Reed. Now, Ms. Benson, your client's position." Catherine rose, smooth and confident. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges the inappropriate nature of her relationship with Mr. Corman, which began only after significant estrangement in her marriage. However, this lapse in judgment shouldn't overshadow 15 years of teaching experience and 8 years as a devoted mother. Mrs. Matthews is prepared to cease contact with Mr. Corman if necessary to facilitate a custody arrangement that serves Willow's best interests." Boone nearly laughed out loud at the blatant lie. Laurel had been at Grady's house the previous night, a fact documented by the private investigator Marcus had hired. Mrs. Matthews seeks primary custody with liberal visitation for Mr. Matthews, Catherine continued. She secured appropriate housing near Willow's school and can provide the nurturing environment a young girl needs. "Thank you, counselor." Judge Harper turned to Marcus. "Mr. Daniels?" Marcus stood, his presence commanding the courtroom. "Your Honor, Mr. Matthews has been the model of stability throughout this difficult time. He's maintained Willow's routine, shielded her from adult conflicts, and prioritized her emotional well-being above all else." He retrieved a folder from his briefcase. "We've submitted evidence that Mrs. Matthews' relationship with Mr. Corman began at least 8 months ago, and that she deliberately exposed Willow to this relationship without Mr. Matthews' knowledge or consent." Marcus handed documents to the clerk. "Additionally, Mr. Corman is currently under investigation by the school board for financial improprieties. We believe Mrs. Matthews' judgment has been severely compromised, making her current custody request untenable." Judge Harper reviewed the papers, her expression growing more severe. "Ms. Benson, were you aware of this investigation?" Catherine looked flustered. "Your Honor, these allegations against Mr. Corman are immaterial to. They speak directly to your client's judgment and the environment she proposes for the child." Judge Harper interrupted. "Were you aware?" "No, Your Honor." The judge turned to Laurel. "Mrs. Matthews, is your relationship with Mr. Corman ongoing?" Laurel glanced at her lawyer, who nodded slightly. "Yes, Your Honor. Despite knowing about this investigation, I don't believe the allegations have merit," Laurel replied, her voice small. Judge Harper's mouth tightened. "I see." She turned to Boone. "Mr. Matthews, your work requires long hours at times. How do you plan to accommodate Willow's needs?" Boone stood. "Your Honor, I've hired additional help in my garage to reduce my hours. My brother has relocated to Charlotte to assist with childcare when needed. Willow's routine hasn't changed, and I intend to keep it that way." "And your feelings toward Mrs. Matthews?" Boone met the judge's gaze steadily. "I believe Willow needs her mother in her life. I don't object to visitation, but my priority is protecting my daughter from further upheaval and confusion." Judge Harper nodded, considering. She deliberated for several minutes, reviewing the documents before her while the courtroom remained silent. Finally, she looked up. "Having reviewed the evidence and testimony, I find that the child's best interests are served by maintaining her current living arrangement. Therefore, temporary physical custody is awarded to Mr. Matthews, with Mrs. Matthews granted supervised visitation 3 days weekly until final disposition." Laurel gasped, tears filling her eyes. Furthermore, Judge Harper continued, "Neither party shall expose the child to romantic partners during this period. Mrs. Matthews is specifically prohibited from allowing contact between the child and Mr. Corman until further notice. She fixed Laurel with a stern gaze. The court takes a dim view of parental alienation attempts in exposing children to potentially problematic individuals. Let me be clear. Your choices have consequences, Mrs. Matthews. The gavel fell with finality. Next hearing in 60 days. Court adjourned. Boone exhaled slowly, the tension draining from his shoulders. First battle won. Across the aisle, Laurel clutched her mother's hand, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. For a moment, Boone remembered the woman he'd married bright-eyed, laughing, full of dreams. The woman who'd helped him through night terrors after his final deployment. The woman who'd given him Willow. That woman was gone to A.S. He turned to leave. Laurel caught his eye. "This isn't over," she mouthed, anger replacing her tears. Boone nodded once, his face impassive. Never thought it was. Rain pattered against the windshield as Boone sat in his truck across from Charlotte West High School. The digital clock on his dashboard read 3:42 p.m. School had let out 12 minutes ago. Streams of teenagers flowed toward buses and waiting cars. He wasn't supposed to be here. He should have been at the garage, finishing the custom paint job on a restored Triumph. But a call from Willow's teacher had changed his plans. "Mr. Matthews, I thought you should know," Ms. Winters had said, her voice hesitant. "There was a man watching the playground during recess today. When I approached him, he said he was Willow's mother's friend, just checking on her. I told him to leave immediately." "Did he give a name?" Boone had asked, already knowing the answer. "Grady something. He left his card, said he works at West High. Grady Corman, at Willow's elementary school." Watching his daughter. Through the rain, Boone spotted him, Grady's lean figure hurrying toward a silver Audi parked in the teacher's lot. The man moved quickly, hunched against the weather, unaware of being observed. Boone waited until Grady had pulled out of the lot before starting his own engine. He followed at a distance, thankful for the rain that limited visibility and justified his caution. The Audi wound through Charlotte streets, eventually turning into an apartment complex near the university temporary housing, Boone guessed, until Grady's house in Henderson was ready. The kind of place that didn't ask too many questions about its tenants. Boone parked on the street and watched Grady enter a ground floor unit. Then he shut off his engine and waited, rain drumming steadily on the roof of his truck. His phone buzzed. "Hey, where are you?" his brother asked when Boone answered. "Thought you were picking up Willow at 5. Change of plans. Can you get her? Take her for pizza or something. I'll be late." A pause. "What's going on, Boone?" Grady was at Willow's school today, watching her at recess. Tay cursed softly. "What are you doing, man?" "Just having a conversation." "Boone, I'm not stupid," Boone interrupted. "Just make sure Willow's taken care of." After ending the call, Boone sat motionless, watching the apartment. The court order explicitly prohibited Grady from contacting Willow. His presence at the school was a direct violation one Boone could report, but that would mean more hearings, more lawyers, more opportunities for Laurel to plead her case. Some things needed to be handled directly. As darkness fell, lights came on in Grady's apartment. Boone checked his watch. Nearly 2 hours had passed. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the complex had grown quiet as residents settled in for the evening. He opened his glove compartment and removed his Marine Corps challenge, coin a token he'd carried through 3 deployments. A reminder of discipline, of control, of the line between necessary force and excessive violence. Tucking the coin into his pocket, Boone exited the truck and walked calmly toward Grady's unit. No hesitation, no furtiveness. Just a man with purpose. He knocked on the door. Footsteps approached from inside. A lock turned. The door opened to reveal Grady in sweats and a t-shirt, a glass of wine in his hand. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by alarm. "You're Boone Matthews," Boone supplied, his voice level. "Willow's father." Grady's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. "Look, I don't want any trouble." "Then why were you at my daughter's school today?" Grady's eyes widened. "That's not. I wasn't. The teacher called me," Boone said, still perfectly calm. "Said you're watching the playground. Said you left your card. Laurel asked me to check on her," Grady blurted. "She's worried about Willow." "Worried," Boone repeated. So worried she sent you to violate a court order. Grady's posture changed, a hint of defiance entering his expression. Look, man, this is between you and Laurel. I'm just trying to support her. By stalking my 8-year-old daughter, I wasn't stalking anyone, Grady snapped. And for what it's worth, none of this was supposed to happen this way. Laurel was going to tell you properly, after we'd sorted things out. Sorted things out, Boone echoed. You mean after you'd convinced my wife to leave me and take my daughter? Grady sighed dramatically. Laurel was unhappy for years. You have to know that. All those nights alone while you worked on your precious bikes. All those school events you missed. Boone felt a flicker of doubt quickly extinguished. This wasn't the time for self-recrimination. You don't know anything about my marriage, he said flatly. But here's what I know about you. You've been suspended before. For inappropriate relationships. You're under investigation for financial misconduct. And now you're hanging around elementary schools. Grady's face reddened. Those allegations are baseless. Professional jealousy, nothing more. Save it for the school board. Boone stepped closer. I'm only going to say this once. Come near my daughter again. I won't leave you breathing. Grady's cocky demeanor returned. Is that a threat? Because I'm pretty sure threatening a school administrator is. Boone moved before Grady could finish his sentence. A swift jab to the solar plexus doubled the man over, gasping. A follow-up strike to the jaw sent him sprawling backward into his apartment. Boone stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Grady scrambled backward. Wine spilled across his shirt. You're crazy. I'll call the police. For what? Boone advanced slowly. I came to have a civil conversation about why a grown man was watching children at recess. You tripped and fell. Fear flooded Grady's eyes as he realized the situation. No witnesses. No cameras in the budget apartment complex. Just him and a furious ex-Marine. Listen, Grady pleaded. I didn't mean any harm. I'll stay away from Willow, I swear. Not good enough. Boone hauled him up by his shirt collar. You inserted yourself into my family. Helped plan to take my daughter. Showed up at her school. His grip tightened. Actions have consequences, Grady. What followed was brutally efficient. Boone had learned hand-to-hand combat from experts how to subdue, how to cause pain, how to incapacitate without permanent damage. He applied those lessons with cold precision. When it was over, Grady lay curled on the floor, bloodied but conscious. Nothing was broken beyond his nose, and possibly a rib. Nothing that wouldn't heal. Boone crouched beside him, breathing steady despite the exertion. I meant what I said. Come near my daughter again. Next time, we won't have this conversation. Grady nodded weakly, blood streaming from his nose. And one more thing, Boone added, his voice dropping to a growl. Tell Laurel, if she ever sends someone to watch Willow again, I'll file for full custody with no visitation. The judge already thinks her judgment is compromised. This would seal it. He stood, straightening his jacket. No blood on his clothes. No marks on his hands. He'd been careful to the door. Boone paused. Ice that nose. 20 minutes on, 20 off. And find a new job. Far from here. Outside, the rain had stopped. The night air felt cleaner somehow, the weight on Boone's chest lighter. He touched the Marine coin in his pocket, a reminder of where he'd been and who he'd chosen to become. As he drove away, Boone knew there would be repercussions. Grady might report the assault, though that seemed unlikely given his own violation of the court order. Laurel would be furious when she learned what had happened, but his message had been delivered. Willow was off limits. Some lines couldn't be crossed without consequences. For the first time since seeing Laurel with Grady, Boone felt like he was truly in control again. The courtroom was fuller this time, curious lawyers, court staff who'd heard rumors about the case, even a few teachers from Laurel School. Boone sat with Marcus, reviewing last-minute notes before the judge arrived. Mr. Corman's arrest changes everything, Marcus murmured, indicating a newspaper clipping. Parole violation from a DUI 3 years ago. Seems he failed to report his change of employment when he moved districts. Convenient timing, Boone replied, expression neutral. Marcus gave him a measuring look. Very, especially considering the anonymous tip to his parole officer. Boone offered no response. What mattered was that Grady Corman had spent the past week in county lockup far from Willow, far from Laurel, and facing his own legal troubles. Across the aisle, Laurel conferred with Catherine Benson, their expressions tense. Laurel looked haggard, her skin pale, her once immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. She'd lost weight, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. "All rise," the bailiff called. The Honorable Judge Elaine Harper presiding. Judge Harper swept in, settling behind the bench with practiced efficiency. "Be seated. Matthews versus Matthews. Continuance of custody proceedings." She peered over her glasses. "I understand there have been significant developments since our last hearing." "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus stood. "If I may, the individual identified as Mrs. Matthews' paramour, Grady Corman, is currently incarcerated for parole violations. Additionally, he was observed at the minor child school in direct violation of this court's order." Judge Harper's expression darkened. "Is this true, Ms. Benson?" Catherine rose. "Your Honor, my client had no knowledge of Mr. Corman's presence at the school. Furthermore, she was unaware of his criminal history or parole status." "That strains credulity, Counselor," Judge Harper replied dryly. "Your client was involved in a relationship with this individual for nearly a year, according to previous testimony." "Regardless," Catherine pressed on, "Mr. Corman's actions are not attributable to my client. Mrs. Matthews has complied with all court orders and has maintained appropriate visitation with her daughter." Judge Harper studied Laurel. "Mrs. Matthews, did you direct Mr. Corman to visit your daughter's school?" Laurel swallowed visibly. "No, Your Honor." "Were you aware of his criminal record when you began your relationship?" "No, Your Honor. He told me it was a misunderstanding that had been resolved." Judge Harper's expression remained skeptical. "I see." She turned to Marcus. "Mr. Daniels, your client's position?" "Your Honor, Mr. Matthews has maintained a stable home environment for Willow throughout these proceedings. He's adhered to every court directive and has facilitated visitation despite Mrs. Matthews' continued relationship with a now incarcerated felon." Marcus gestured to a thick folder before him. "We've prepared a proposed permanent custody arrangement that grants Mrs. Matthews supervised visitation while maintaining primary custody with Mr. Matthews. Given recent events, we believe this arrangement best serves Willow's interests." "Ms. Benson," Judge Harper prompted. Catherine stood again, looking less confident than before. "Your Honor, despite recent developments, my client remains Willow's mother. She's been an exemplary teacher for 15 years and has no previous incidents that would suggest poor judgment regarding her daughter's welfare." She handed several papers to the clerk. "We're requesting joint custody with alternating weekends and shared holidays. Mrs. Matthews has secured suitable housing and is committed to providing a stable environment for Willow." Judge Harper reviewed both proposals. "I'd like to hear from Dr. Reed regarding her continued observations of the child." Dr. Reed approached the bench. "Your Honor, I've met with Willow 3 additional times since our last hearing. She continues to thrive in her father's care and has expressed relief that, and I quote, things are normal at home now. She enjoys visits with her mother, but has repeatedly stated she wishes to continue living with her father. And her understanding of the situation between her parents? Willow understands her parents are divorcing. She's aware of her mother's relationship with Mr. Corman and has expressed discomfort with the idea of spending time with him." Judge Harper nodded. "Thank you, Doctor." She turned to the attorneys. "Based on the evidence before me, I'm prepared to rule on permanent custody arrangements." Laurel gripped the table edge, knuckles white. "This court awards sole physical custody of Willow Matthews to Boone Matthews, with supervised visitation rights to Laurel Matthews on alternating weekends and 1 weekday evening." The judge fixed Laurel with a stern gaze. "Mrs. Matthews, your visitation is contingent upon having no contact with Grady Corman and maintaining a stable living environment. Any violation will result in immediate review of these arrangements." Laurel's face crumpled, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. "Furthermore," Judge Harper continued, "Mrs. Matthews is ordered to pay child support in the amount of $750 monthly, reduced from standard calculations in consideration of her current financial circumstances." She turned to Boone. "Mr. Matthews, while the court has found in your favor, I remind you that fostering a positive relationship between Willow and her mother remains in your daughter's best interest. Interference with visitation will not be tolerated. I understand, Your Honor, Boone replied. Judge Harper nodded. Very well. Property division and financial matters will be addressed in separate proceedings. Court adjourned. The gavel fell with finality. Around them, the courtroom emptied quickly, spectators filing out with whispered comments. Boone remained seated, absorbing the victory he'd worked methodically to secure. Across the aisle, Laurel sat motionless, tears flowing freely now. Catherine packed her briefcase with efficient movements, her expression revealing her disappointment with the outcome. Marcus touched Boone's shoulder. I'll file the final paperwork. You did well in there, kept your composure, stayed focused on Willow. Boone nodded. Thank you. As Marcus departed, Laurel approached Boone's table. Her eyes were red-rimmed, mascara smudged beneath them. Are you happy now? She asked, voice trembling. You've taken everything. Boone met her gaze calmly. I didn't take anything, Laurel. You threw it away. I made a mistake, she whispered. One mistake. No. Boone stood, gathering his papers. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was calculated betrayal. For months, while involving our daughter. Laurel's expression hardened. You set Grady up, didn't you? The anonymous tip to his parole officer. Does it matter? He broke parole. He violated a court order by coming to Willow's school. Boone kept his voice low. Choices have consequences. And what about me? I lost my job, my home, my daughter. You still have visitation, Boone interrupted, which is more than you planned to give me when you were plotting with Grady. Laurel flinched as if struck. How did you? Your iPad. The messages where you discussed how to limit my access to Willow. How to paint me as unstable. Boone leaned closer. Did you really think I wouldn't fight for my daughter? She's my daughter too. Then act like it. Boone gathered his coat. Be at the house Saturday at 10. Willow will be ready for your visit. As he walked away, Laurel called after him. You won't get away with this, Boone. Someday Willow will know what you did. Boone paused at the door. What I did was protect her. That's all she needs to know. Outside the courthouse, a light rain had begun to fall. Boone stood under the overhang, breathing deeply. The battle was over. He had won. Willow was safe, his home secure, his revenge complete. Why did victory taste so hollow? He thought of Laurel as she'd been when they met, bright, compassionate, full of plans for their future. The woman who'd nursed him through nightmares after his final deployment. The woman who'd held his hand through 36 hours of labor to bring Willow into the world. That woman was gone, replaced by a stranger who'd lied, who'd plotted to take his daughter, who'd betrayed every promise they'd made. Maybe that woman had never really existed at all. Rain soaked his shoulders as he walked to his truck. There was no satisfaction in Laurel's tears or Grady's arrest. Only the cold comfort of knowing he'd protected what mattered most. Willow was waiting. Summer warmth bathed the newly rebuilt porch of the house on Sycamore Hill. Boone worked methodically, brushing polyurethane onto the fresh cedar boards with slow, even strokes. The scent of wood and varnish mingled with the aroma of charcoal from the grill, where Tate tended burgers and Corn Point. 6 months had passed since the final custody hearing. 6 months of rebuilding not just the porch, which had needed replacement after years of neglect, but their lives as well. New routines, new traditions, new beginnings. Willow sat on the lawn with her colored pencils, tongue caught between her teeth in concentration as she drew. At 9 years old now, she'd grown an inch taller, her dark hair longer, her smile returning after months of uncertainty. How's it coming along? Jenny asked, stepping onto the porch with a tray of lemonade. Boone sat back on his heels, surveying his work. Almost done. One more coat tomorrow. Jenny set the tray on a small table. It looks good. The whole place does. It was true. The house had transformed over the past months. Fresh paint, new landscaping, repaired gutters, all the maintenance Boone had postponed during the years when work consumed him. Now, the modest ranch home gleamed with renewed purpose. Couldn't have done it without help, Boone acknowledged, nodding toward Tay at the grill. Jenny's followed his gaze. Who'd have thought you two would be close again? Sometimes good comes from bad situations. Boone nodded, thinking of the strange path that had led them here. His brother's return. their reconciliation over shared purpose, the slow healing of old wounds while addressing new ones. "Daddy, look," Willow called, holding up her drawing. "It's our house." Boone set down his brush and crossed to where his daughter sat. The drawing showed their home, recognizable by the large oak tree in the front yard with 3 figures on the porch. "Boone, Tay," Willow herself, all smiling under a bright yellow sun. "It's perfect, Will," he said, squatting beside her. "How about we hang it in the kitchen when it's done?" Willow beamed. "Can we put it on the fridge? So everyone can see it." "Even better." Boone ruffled her hair gently. "Go wash up for dinner, okay? Uncle Tay says the burgers are almost ready." As Willow darted inside, Tay approached, wiping his hands on a towel. "Kid's got talent. Gets it from her mother," Boone replied automatically, then paused, surprised by the lack of bitterness in his voice. Tay raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. The sound of tires on gravel drew their attention. A rusted Honda pulled up at the curb, once red, now faded to a dull orange, with a mismatched driver's side door. Laurel emerged, wearing the blue polo shirt and khaki pants of her new job at the grocery store deli counter. "Right on time," Janice murmured, checking her watch. "Should I get Willow?" Boone shook his head. "Give them a minute." Laurel approached slowly, her gaze taking in the renovated house, the gathering on the porch, the grill sending up wisps of smoke. If she resented the scene of domestic tranquility, her expression didn't show it. "Afternoon," she called, stopping at the edge of the lawn. "Laurel," Boone nodded. "You're welcome to come up." She hesitated, then climbed the steps to the porch. 6 months had changed her too, the designer clothes replaced by practical wear, the carefully maintained hairstyle grown out to reveal natural gray at the temples. She looked older, but somehow more substantial, less like the facade she'd maintained for years. "The house looks nice," she offered. "You've been busy. Had help?" Boone gestured to Tay and Janice. "Coffee? No thanks. I can't stay long. Just dropping off Willow's science project. She left at my place last weekend." Laurel handed over a carefully wrapped package. Their fingers didn't touch during the exchange, an unspoken boundary established by months of cautious interaction. "I'll make sure she gets it," Boone said. "She's inside washing up." Laurel nodded, shifting her weight awkwardly. "How is she?" "Her teacher said she's doing well in math." "She is." "Brought home an A on her last test." Boone's voice softened. "She's got your head for numbers." A flicker of surprise crossed Laurel's face at the compliment. "That's good to hear." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. "I should go," Laurel said finally. "I've got a shift at 4. Boone nodded. "Willow," he called toward the house. "Your mom's here." Moments later, Willow burst onto the porch, her face lighting up. "Mom, did you bring my volcano? Mrs. Pearson says we're presenting on Monday." "Right here, sweetie." Laurel's entire demeanor softened as she crouched to her daughter's level. "All wrapped up and ready." "Thanks. Are you staying for burgers?" "Uncle Tay made lots." Laurel glanced at Boone, who gave a slight nod. "I can't today, honey. I have to work. But I'll see you on Saturday, remember? We're going to the museum. The one with the dinosaurs." "That's the one." Laurel brushed a strand of hair from Willow's forehead. "Be good for your dad, okay?" Willow hugged her mother tightly. "I will. Love you, Mom." "Love you too, sweetheart." Laurel held on a moment longer than necessary, then released her. "I'll call you tomorrow night." As Laurel descended the porch steps, a flash of movement caught Boone's eye. A silver Audi passing slowly by the house, familiar, though he hadn't seen it in months. Grady Corman sat behind the wheel, his face partially obscured by sunglasses but recognizable nonetheless. His gaze locked briefly with Boone's before sliding to Laurel, who had reached her car. Boone tensed, hand instinctively moving to Willow's shoulder, but the Audi continued past without stopping. Grady didn't speak to Laurel, didn't wave, didn't acknowledge her presence at all. Within moments, the car had turned the corner and disappeared. Laurel stood frozen beside her Honda, watching the Audi vanish. When she turned back toward the house, her expression was a complex mixture of emotions: regret, resignation, perhaps a flicker of relief. She met Boone's gaze across the lawn, a wordless exchange passing between them. Then she got in her car and drove away. "Was that Tay began quietly. Yeah. Boone's grip on Willow's shoulder relaxed. Looks like he's back in town. Problem? Boone considered the question, watching as Laurel's car turned the corner. No, he decided. Not anymore. Willow tugged at his hand. Can I help with the burgers, Uncle Tay? You bet, kid. Tay led her toward the grill. Someone's got to supervise the chef. As they moved away, Jenny stepped closer to Boone. You okay? Yeah. Boone turned to survey the house, his house, Willow's home, their sanctuary. We're okay. The sun slanted across the porch, warming the fresh wood beneath his feet. From the grill came the sound of Tay and Willow laughing. Behind him, the house stood solid and renewed. Boone Matthews sipped his beer, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease. He didn't look down the street to see if Grady's car would return. He didn't watch for Laurel's rust-eaten Honda. He didn't need it. He'd already won. Not just custody of Willow or ownership of the house. Not just the satisfaction of seeing Laurel and Grady's plans collapse. He'd won peace, security, control over what mattered, and not a single drop of forgiveness to spare.